Saigon, we love ya. And one of the best ways to see this wonderful city is on the back of a motorcycle. You can rent a moto taxi very cheap, and they're available everywhere. It's a great way to get around town. We are going to drive you across town and starting out in the modern downtown area where they've got some fancy shops, very upscale down here, beautiful sidewalks, very clean. And we're going to take you all the way across town on the back of a bike. From that seat, you get a lot of fresh air and an unobstructed view. So we'll be checking out the traffic as we go, the motorcycles, the people, the sidewalks, the shops along the way. It all adds up to a most amusing and multi-dimensional way of looking at the city. You can focus on the crazy traffic if you like, or look at all the buildings whizzing by, or the people on the sidewalks. There's a lot to see. It really fills the eye. People in Vietnam don't have a lot of money by Western standards, but many young people do have enough to afford a new motorcycle. And they see it not only as a great way of getting around town, but it's kind of a status symbol. These young affluent consumers are switching to slightly more expensive scooters as a luxury fashion accessory. And they really take good care of them. You see they're washed and polished and looking good. It's very common to see a moped with a passenger on the back. That's normal. Or how about 3 people or 4 people on a little motorcycle? You see that quite often, as you notice here driving along in the streets of Saigon. Very typical to have the husband driving, the wife sitting behind him, one small child between them, and maybe another small child in front of the father. 4 people. And occasionally with a baby in mama's arms. It's very ecological to have 2 people on a little motorcycle. It gets about 60 miles to the gallon or 80 miles to the gallon, and with 2 people on board, you effectively double that. Or with 3 people, you're getting the equivalent of 150 miles to the gallon. You can't beat that. In America, our rules are very strict about such things. For example, about having a passenger on a moped. Oh, that's not allowed in America. 2 people on a 50cc machine is very common in Asia, but it's not allowed in America. Even though a moped can easily handle the weight of 2 people, and it can be maneuvered no problem. You can fit a lot more vehicles on the road if they're motor scooters and motorcycles rather than cars, so it's very efficient. Actually, most of the motorcycles that we see in the movie are a little bigger than your typical moped. Moped has a 50cc engine, and these motorcycles in the streets of Saigon typically are 150cc, maybe 200cc, which provides sufficient power to make them safe to operate. And that's big enough. It's very rare to see a much bigger motorcycle, which are popular in America, but you don't need that kind of big size for driving in the city. After all, motorcycles can go up to 1200 cc's, 1400. They have big engines, a lot of horsepower, Harley Davidsons, Kawasaki racing machines that you find more typically in America. Typical American over-the-top kind of usage, overdoing it. You don't need that kind of power and speed anywhere, really. Unless maybe you're on the open highway, a long cross-country voyage. Sure, it's good to have a lot of power. But for urban driving, the small motorcycle's ideal. Worldwide, scooters can be seen as one of the most popular ways of getting around. They are very ecological after all, and they're also very sociable. You can be driving along, as the Vietnamese love to do, and chatting with your fellow drivers as you go. Maybe you're doing 25, 30 miles an hour, and you're driving side by side with a friend and carrying on a conversation. For short trips that are typical of the urban scene, say of a few miles, why should you be driving a 4,000-pound hunk of metal, a big car, when you could just as easily drive on a very lightweight and economical motor scooter? To confess a certain personal bias, I will admit that I am a motorcycle lover. I've been riding one kind of two wheels or another for 40 years. Big motorcycles, little motorcycles, mopeds. Currently, a Honda 150 motor scooter is my ride of choice. And in fact, that's becoming the most popular, I must say, the most popular kind of two-wheel vehicle in the world. The small motorcycle. And that's certainly what you find here in Vietnam. And of course, gasoline is fairly expensive no matter where you are in the world. In a country like Vietnam, people just can't afford to buy huge amounts of gasoline. So again, the motorcycle is a very economical option. There are monthly rentals available, and that's also very reasonable, starting at about $60 a month for a small motorcycle, or up to $80 for a slightly bigger one, slightly better one. So very inexpensive. Everybody is on good behavior on the road, and they're really not going that fast. We're putting along at about 15, 20 miles an hour. So it's a comfortable speed. We're making progress. We're getting across town. These drivers are really highly skilled. It's nothing like drivers in America. They were born with it. They were brought up with it, and they practice it today as adults. And they're all very easygoing, very sociable. The traffic laws are such that it's designed to keep the traffic flowing. And the traffic flows together in the sense that you don't see speed demons racing along and trying to pass everybody else like you might in America or in the Western world. The people here have a more cohesive society, a more sociable society, it would seem, especially judging from their behavior on the road. They're all in it together. Nearly every one of these motorcycles has a good muffler. Of course, they're beeping their horns. That's how they communicate. It doesn't do much good when everybody's beeping their horns, but that's just part of the music of the streets. But you're not hearing that loud, harsh, blasting roar of a motorcycle without a muffler. They don't have straight pipes here. So there must be some kind of law that they're enforcing. A related safety factor for the pedestrian is that when you're crossing the street, just pick a path and walk and be aware of the motorcycles coming at you, but don't worry about it. Don't run, don't stop. Just walk at a steady pace on a straight path so that they can see you and they're going to veer around you. It's very dangerous if the pedestrian should stop suddenly in the middle of the road or run, because that throws off the drivers. They're planning to just miss you. They're going to veer either just to the left of you or just to the right of you. So you walk along at a steady pace and you'll make it no problem to the other side of the road. You're not going to find very many marked crosswalks, and traffic lights are sometimes not available. So you'll be jaywalking. You'll be crossing at mid-block. And there too, the laws are very casual. Jaywalking is fine. There's no laws against it. You're not going to get a ticket. You're not going to get busted for crossing the street like you might in some of our more strict American situations. And why not? It's perfectly safe if you know what you're doing to walk across the street at mid-block. The most popular brand in Vietnam is the Honda, and Honda is definitely gearing up production, as are several of the other world major motorcycle manufacturers in Vietnam. And it's good for the economy because the bikes are made in the country, providing quality jobs and bikes at a low price. So the motorcycle producers in the country are seeing good prospects for the future. 3 million motorcycles were sold last year in Vietnam. The growth is reaching 35% every year. So that's really quite phenomenal. Population of about 6 million people in the area. And Honda has really caused a market sensation with some of their new products. There's the Airblade model, which is a 110cc, and they sold 300,000 of those a few years ago. And last year, they believe to have sold 1 million of that particular model of Honda. Notice we've arrived at a very busy market area in Saigon's Chinatown. It's the Bin Tay Market, which is the biggest covered market and market street area in all of Saigon. Very much a local place. Really a lot of hustle bustle here in the streets and inside the market. The entire neighborhood for several blocks all around the outside of the market is also a happening place with lots of street vendors and open front shop stalls and people everywhere. This is a great place to explore when you're visiting. You've seen that the motorcycle is more than just a way of getting around town. It's really an extension of the body. It's part and fabric of the culture here. These scooter manufacturing companies are gearing up production to such a high level that they're able to export quite a number of motor scooters to the nearby countries and the surrounding regions such as Thailand and Malaysia. And they're even exporting scooters back to Japan and Korea and on to Australia and Indonesia. And they're manufacturing parts as well for export. So it's really a booming industry. Honda's increasing their production capacity to fulfill the customers' orders, and they're hoping to produce 2 million motorcycles a year in the very near future. Now, there's also scooters that are imported from China, but the quality is not quite as good as those scooters that are made in Vietnam. A Chinese motor scooter could sell for $500 brand new, so about half the price of the Japanese models from Vietnam. But the quality is just not there. They might break down after a couple of years, whereas these Japanese scooters just keep going and going with very little maintenance required. And that brings to an end our long motorcycle ride through Saigon, taking you from one end of town to the other. We do have yet another motorcycle movie on our YouTube channel, so if you want more of a ride through Saigon, look for our other movie. It's just as good, if not better. We have a lot more movies about Vietnam covering the highlights of this wonderful country, taking you to Hanoi, Saigon, Hue, Hoi An, and much more.